Good morning, everyone. My name is Fire Chief Alexis Vondermuffen, or Skyline Ash, with the Lexington Fire Department. Today, I want to do our department training program. Every now and then, the Fire Academy people, whether it's the supervisors within the academy, or the heads, or even the chiefs board, aka the Kentucky Fire Commission, will post regular trainings. They are going to be not on a scheduled basis, but we would like to inform you all whether it's via YouTube channel, training slides like today, voiced training slides like today. If you would like more of these voiced ones so you can follow along and take notes and pause when you would like, please do let me know in our department chat and just ping me and be like, hey, I like these voice slides. I like how you do it instead of watching a, 5-minute or, even up to a 30-minute YouTube video and, go from there and try to follow along. So let's just jump right into it. Today we're going to be talking about the duty to act, Section 1, duty to act. We're only going to be talking about Section 1 today. Section 2 should be posted sometime later today, hopefully. I apologize if it doesn't. If it doesn't, I will get to it around eventually, but Section 1, duty to act. Let's just jump right into it. So duty to act, what does this all mean? So there's a legal definition, and then there's the first responder mandate. Let's talk about the legal definition. So the duty to act arises when the law imposes an obligation on an individual to intervene to prevent harm or provide assistance. Under general American law, there is no legal requirement to help a stranger, even if assistance is easy and safe. Liability for inaction only occurs under specific conditions, such as a special relationship, statute, contract, or voluntary assumption of responsibility. For firefighters and EMTs, the duty to act is a binding legal and ethical obligation to respond to emergencies, assess patients, and provide care when safe to do so. It is not a general obligation to rescue everyone, but rather a specific responsibility that arises directly under defined on-duty circumstances. We'll just jump right on into that. So basically what this is talking about is when you can provide care. And we'll jump into on duty, off duty, and as a civilian as well. But this is talking about care and how we handle that care. Let's move on. So the duty to how the duty to act exists. These are laws surrounding the duty to act. So there's 4 laws, I would say. The first one is status. So if you're on duty status, once EMS or a firefighting unit is dispatched and accepts the call, the agency and its personnel have a legal duty to respond to provide care. So we can't just say, no, you're out of luck. Sorry about that. Maybe next time. We are required to respond to emergencies when a call comes through and we're not busy or actively in an emergency scenario. Whether we are in the middle of training, whether we are, eating during role play or something like that, we still have to respond to the call. And then there's contact. So this is provider to patient. If a firefighter or EMT begins a medical assessment or treatment, a duty to act is created and must be fulfilled until care is properly transferred. We'll be jumping into a scenario that involves that, especially this provider to patient one. Because the EMS and, well, for the provider, we'll just say the Lexington Fire Department is the provider and the patient will be, the patient. But we'll jump into that scenario here in a few moments. The mandates, so statutory laws. Some states have duty to act laws requiring certain individuals to assist when they know someone is in grave physical harm unless it would endanger themselves. So it really depends on state law, but we're not really focusing on that. We're just going to be focusing on, 1, 2, and 4. Moving on to 4, which is our special rule, which is your special duty law. In some cases, even if the initial call is canceled, a special duty may still exist if the patient is later found to be injured and a prior relationship existed. So meaning if we helped them before in the past for a heart attack or burn victim, we still have to respond to that call if we have the relationship with them during that time. So let's discuss. So we talked about 1, 2, and 4, and we're not talking about 3 mainly because it's not really going to evolve around us. There's some other things about duty to act that you should know. So as a civilian, and when you're off duty, the duty to act does not oblige to you, but it can protect you under the Good Samaritan law. So if you jumped in and started performing CPR, you'll be covered under the Good Samaritan law. Now, it covers a broad range of things. It depends. I know the duty to act, or not duty to act, but the Good Samaritan law, it's good, especially for DNRs. They'll cover you for that. So if somebody has a DNR and you weren't assessing them properly, like as general civilian wasn't, and they started performing aid before EMS arrives and they revive them, they cannot legally be sued for that. There's a lot of other things that it can go to, but the biggest one that has not been talked about in this slideshow is the Good Samaritan law. We might jump into that into a later date, but we will not be talking about it during this training session. Let's move on. So let's talk about a scenario. This can be an interactive review and analysis. So how can we put this in effect, and how can I walk y'all through if something like this is to happen in game? So let's talk about the scenario, and we'll go over the answers to the scenario as well, and help y'all guide it through this and what you should do. So Engine 3, our paramedic unit, and Medic 2, our small ambulance, are responding code 3 northbound on Highway 75 to an unconscious 56-year-old male with vaginal respirations. At the intersection with West Park Boulevard, an eastbound pickup truck collides broadside with a sedan directly in front of them. Both units stop to perform a windshield survey. So let's just discuss about that. Let's not read over anything else. Let's just discuss about that. So we know we were originally called out to service for a 56-year-old male with agonal respirations. We may, depending on the scenario, let's just say we were responding, we're doing lights and sirens, and we're approaching that intersection, and somebody didn't hear us, freaked out, or it could be a multitude of different reasons, and they collided at that intersection. We aren't just going to pass by them, we're going to stop and help them. You are required to stop and help them. That's where this duty to act as an on-duty scenario. So if you're on duty, aka we're responding to a medical call for service, we have to stop and help them. But you're like, hey, Sky, what about the 56-year-old male? What about that call? What are we going to do with that? They're going to just be dying? No, trust me. We'll have some steps in place for that. Let's just go over our observations and conditions, and then we'll go over the question. And then I'll discuss what we're going to do with that 56-year-old male that's having those respirations problems. So let's talk about number 1, sedan observation. So you find a female driver. They're conscious but trapped inside the vehicle. They have heavy bleeding as present, complaints of chest pain and difficulty breathing, and a teen passenger is unconscious with shallow respirations. That gives us a lot. So number 1, what we're going to identify is entrapment, bleeding, chest pain and difficulty breathing, and then there's also another patient that has really bad breathing problems, aka the shallow respirations. So just by that, we have enough to understand what's going on and assess if they're at critical, low, or they can just walk away fine. So, and during this, we're going to basically say that the female driver is going to be a critical condition. We don't know yet, because we haven't moved on to scene conditions. We don't know yet on what's going on with the vehicle or anything like that. All we know is there's entrapment, our main stuff, entrapment, heavy bleeding, chest pain and difficulty breathing, an extra passenger who has bad breathing conditions. Those are all easy to fix, but we'll work on that next. Pickup observations. So you see a male driver, they're outside the vehicle, confused with head bleeding. And then you also see a female passenger, but they remain seated and is completely unmoving, meaning they're not really doing anything. They're just sitting there. Maybe they are not awake or conscious, or maybe they are and just in shock in some way. So with these observations for number 2, we're going to be focusing on that male driver and that female passenger. Who do you think is going to be our priority? Do you think it's going to be the male driver who is outside the vehicle and their head's completely bleeding, or are we going to focus on that female passenger? Those are very good questions, and what should we do? Maybe because we have Engine 3 and Medic 2 at our disposal, we can do a variety of things. We can have one person do one patient and another person do another patient while actively monitoring the scene. Let's move on. We'll come back to all these, I promise, to scene conditions. So now that we got our victims and what's going on with them, let's think exterior. Let's think what's going on that we don't immediately find through our windshield survey. So number 1, we're seeing an active fuel leak, and it's visible from one of the vehicles. Traffic is beginning to back up rapidly. High risk of secondary collisions, and bystanders are actively trying to grab responders' attention. So that's a lot to take in. So we have 4 patients to deal with, an active fuel leak, traffic, being terrible, and then we're also going to have a very high risk of secondary collisions, whether that is another MVA or a vehicle running into a firefighter or into another the ongoing incident, or into anything really. It could be going into a building. So we're going to have to, think about those things, especially if traffic is beginning to back up. And then you also see that bystanders are actively trying to grab responders' attention. They're going to be pulling us. Like if you're on scene, they're going to be the ones trying to pull us away, and they're going to want to talk, and they're going to want to say what they saw and all that. Ignore that for now. Just tell them, hey, if you can, they're not our priority, but if you can, just tell them, hey, we're currently working on this. We'll get to you in a moment. Maybe PD or sheriff's office or KSP is going to talk with them and get that information. So let's go over the question, the critical discussion question. So based on the principles of the duty to act laws, describe the actions Engine 3 and Medic 2 should take upon arrival. Address scene management, patient care priorities, and dispatch communication in the original emergency call disposition. So let's think. So when we are doing something like this and you see a motor vehicle accident, what should be what do you guys think the first thing we should do? Do we think we should immediately assess the patients? Do we attend to the active fuel leak? Do we try to stop traffic? Do we call dispatch? What do we do? There's 2 main things we're going to want to focus on first. Number 1 is that scene management. How are we going to identify scene management? So whether Engine 3 or Medic 2, whoever the highest ranked member or officer or whatever is on, they'll immediately take incident command or pass that incident command if they're busy. Incident command shall be established and should be the first thing you should do while on scene. You should understand who your incident commander is, and if you need questions, not questions, but if you have something to say to the incident command, then you need to understand who that is. So once you have incident command established, we're going to want to do a few things. Because traffic is beginning to back up and that high risk of secondary collisions, because that's what we're going to focus on, we're going to immediately want to try to, conduct TIMS, our traffic and emergency management system. So we're going to, use the engine and block traffic going, let's say this is a one-way street, or it's a one-way street because it's a highway, as seen up here at the top, it's a highway. So it's one way, one direction, so there's no risk of oncoming travel. We're going to use engine 3 and we're going to block that the entire highway. We're just going to shut it down. Incident command at this point should be giving that order as well as communicating with dispatch. Dispatch is going to be our key people here to provide additional resources, mutual aid, and any available on-duty police, sheriff's office, or KSP. So while incident command is, talking to dispatch, they're going to be saying, Engine 3 established command at, West Park Boulevard. This is going to be exactly on Highway 75. We got a 2-vehicle MVA. One's going to be a sedan. One's going to be a pickup. 4 passengers have been accounted for. Active fuel leak going on. Can I get PD en route or whatever agency is nearby to get en route to help with traffic management and the bystanders. And then they're also going to want to call, DOT. They're going to, tell dispatch, hey, can we get DOT on scene as well? Tell them to remain back until farther notice. We will give them instructions on what to do later when the scene is beginning to clear up. So those are all things that incident commanders should be doing. A, they're going to be monitoring the traffic. B, they're going to be giving orders. So all my officers out there, pay attention. So they're going to be, what did I say? They're going to be, talking to dispatch, letting them know what's going on. They're going to be requesting additional units. They're going to be giving out commands as needed. Another thing that, that incident command may be doing to dispatch is letting them know that Engine 3 and Medic 2 are going to be out of service for this 56-year-old male with the agonal respirations. If I can get another medic unit en route to that call on that, and then, communicate properly. Communication is going to be a biggest thing during this incident. So let's assess that. So we got Tim's covered, we got dispatch covered, we got everything else covered. What's the next biggest thing we're going to focus on? Is, well, A, we know that the scene is safe because we're just going to assume that right now. I haven't told y'all, so we're going to assume it. And at this time, it is. But one thing that's causing it unsafe, do you see what it is? It's going to be the traffic, but we already did that, right? No, it's going to be the active fuel leak. What are we going to do about that? So, engines carry, especially this paramedic engine. This paramedic engines carry maybe some retardant for the fuel or something to prevent fuel leaks. Let's just say the fuel leak is the sedan, because it doesn't give us all that information, but I'm going to give you that information. Let's say the fuel leak is the sedan. So incident command is going to be telling the aka engine 3, they're going to be telling engine 3, we got an entrapment here with a female driver and an extra passenger. We need to extricate them immediately and prevent any explosions occurring. They're also going to make sure that somebody's going to be on the hose line, stretching supply lines, and trying to, if there's an active going fire, let's say there is, we're going to make sure that fire is going to be going out. So they're going to be doing that, as well as incident command, after giving those instructions, going to be talking to Medic 2, because it's another unit that we can use. We're going to be telling Medic 2, hey, we're going to need to assess this male driver and female passenger. Does the female passenger have a pulse? Are they breathing? Is everything going to be okay? We're going to get basic baseline vital signs. We're not going to need, their blood sugar levels. That's not our focus. We're going to be, at this point, we're going to be doing our primary assessment to all my medical people in there, and that has gone through that EMT training. Y'all should know what primary assessment is. This is when we're going to be quick head-to-toe assessment. I'm going to be looking for major things, anything we may have missed during our first windshield survey, and we'll go through that. So what patient do you think is our priority right now? Do we think it's the female driver, the teen passenger, the male driver, or the other female passenger? Well, that's tricky because we have 4 people and, all of them are in pretty rough condition, I'd say. Let's focus on the female driver that's trapped. And because I said that was the one with an active fuel leak. So our female driver is going to be the number one. So we're going to get them out first. Our second person we're going to be focusing on is the secondary female passenger in the pickup. So we're going to be focusing on this one first. And then we're going to focus on this. Why didn't we go for the male driver? Because at least this, we know that they're confused. So meaning they're alert on the AVPU scare, are they alert, verbal, can they wiggle their toes, all that stuff. So because they're just an A on the AVPU scale, as we know of so far, we're going to be focusing on the female passenger because we got a 0 out on that AVPU scale because we don't know if they're awake. We don't know anything until we assess this patient because we just did a quick look through the windshield. So let's say we get this secondary female passenger out. Who's our next person we're going to be focusing on? We're probably going to be focusing on this male driver. Let's say, hold up, I said there was a fuel leak. What about this team passenger? Who's going to be coming next? They're still in the car. Maybe they're getting out. This is when incident command is probably going to get involved and communicate with all of this. So maybe incident command is going to be saying, let's focus while y'all are getting the female driver out of the vehicle. Let's say there's another, person on your apparatus. We can use them to grab this teenage passenger while we focus on the female passenger. And then your other person's going to be getting this male driver. So after we get all of that, a lot of things should happen. And in short, different times. We're going to be checking for the bleeding control. So we got 2 people that's bleeding. Who are those 2 people? It's the female driver and the male driver. We'll say these symptoms right here is specifically for the female driver because we already know that the teen passenger is just unconscious with, very light respirations. So if you want to be cheeky about this, which you could be, the easiest person to attend to is going to be this teen passenger. Although they're, unconscious, it may just because they don't have enough oxygen flowing through them and they're, maybe during the incident, they got the wind knocked out of them and they can't breathe and now they passed out because they're not getting enough oxygen, but we know they're breathing because it's just shallow. So all you need to do is hook them up with, hook them up to your EKG monitoring if you need to, if we have one. Get them some supply of O2, whether that's through necessary means. We'll probably go for a non-rebreather during this. That way we can provide that continuous positive airway pressure, CPAP. That way they are consistently giving them airway. At this time, PD should be arrived on scene as well as additional medical units. What we're going to tell that other medical unit is to transport this person. Why do we want to transport them? Because we just finished with them. All they needed was some oxygen. They'll do the secondary assessment in the hospital, or not hospital, in the ambulance going to the hospital. So they'll do all that. So the teen is now done. Who do we focus on next? We're going to focus on this female driver. Let's say this female passenger, while we're focusing on the female driver, let's say incident command gets notice that the female passenger's DOA. DOA is dead on arrival. That means they are completely dead. There's nothing we can do. We can't do CPR. It depends on how this could have happened. DOA can be on scene DOA or on arrival DOA. So when it's on arrival, there's nothing we can do. I mean, it's visibly. If it's not visibly, we still want to assess that pulse. If they don't have a pulse, they're not breathing, they're gone. There's nothing we can do. Even if we hooked up to an EKG and they started flatlining right there, if we hook them up to an EKG and they start flatlining, we can't do anything. At this point, it's been too long for them to be coming back. So we're going to pronounce DOA over dispatch and be, let's say engine 3's command. So engine 3, show ×1 DOA on arrival. We have a team passenger that's going to be transported by, let's say medic 1, because that's our other medic unit. Now, Who do we have left? The female driver and the male driver. We'll call the incident command should also be calling corner, but I mean that should be obvious because we need to get that body out of there. So we're gonna have one. Who do you think, if you have an EMT paramedic, who do you think should be focusing on? Do you think the paramedic should be focusing on the male driver, or do you think the paramedic should be focusing on the female driver, or vice versa? Should the EMT be focusing on female driver, or should the EMT focus on the male driver? So because of EMT and their scope of practice, what should they do? Well, EMTs can do what? They can provide airway. They can maintain airway. They can control bleeding. They can help with the chest pain. That's everything an EMT can do. An EMT may not be able to assess this male driver, so we're going to put that EMT with this female driver because I know that EMT can stop the bleed. Whether it's packing, tourniquets, anything like that, they're gonna stop that bleed. Once the bleed stop, they can start, providing airway. Whether that's because we know this person's conscious, we're still gonna give them airway. Some things we don't know could be internal. EMTs aren't going to know everything internal. They may know some things via experience, but let's say there's no internal stuff for this patient. So the EMT could do all this. They're gonna, give them, the oxygen and wait for a paramedic. While the EMT's doing all that, because it takes time, the paramedic's gonna focus on the male driver. So paramedic, they walk up, they see this guy dizzy, confused, they don't know what they're doing. Obviously head trauma, maybe some bruising and other stuff like that. We're going to be focusing on. So as a paramedic, you should be focusing on what in this situation? A, you already know their AFPU scale. I mean, they're alert. They know what's going. Well, they don't know what's going on, but they can. They're obviously walking around and outside the vehicle, so they're okay in some shape. But the head bleeding is going to be your biggest concern because A, we're going to want to stop that bleed, so we're going to bandage it, with some gauze and medical tape to keep the gauze on there, and redo it every now and then. Because of the head, because they're confused, they may not be getting enough oxygen to their brain. A lot of times when people are disoriented, this is something a paramedic should know, but a lot of times when people are disoriented, it just means there's not enough oxygen going through there, or maybe they have blood loss or something like that because of the excessive blood loss. So as an EMT, what do we do? Or no, I mean a paramedic, I'm sorry, what do we do? We're going to focus on, oxygen, give them the oxygen they need for their brain. We're going to hook them up to an IV with fluids. This is after we do the head bleeding. We assess that. If they're going to be doing all that, paramedic should be. And, we covered the oxygen, we covered the fluids via the IV fluids, and then we're also going to probably want to give them a transfusion if one is provided. Not all ambulances are able to do a transfusion. A blood transfusion is what I'm trying to talk about here. So the blood transfusion, so we're going to be focusing on that, giving them blood so they have enough blood. We're going to, see if they know what their blood type is before we do it, because if you give them the wrong one, they could die. So just, make sure we get the right blood type and then assess with that. And then while that comes up, let's say the male is getting better and better and the EMT's done. We're going to get the paramedic over here now. Because this person's good enough to start verbally communicating and stuff like that, we're going to get this paramedic over here while the EMT assesses him and redoes the bandaging and all that. So paramedic, what can we do about chest pain? So as a paramedic, we can give them aspirin. We can give them some painkillers, depending on how bad they are. And for all my paramedics out there, you should know what aspirin is. Aspirin gives them chest pain. It resolves that. There could be a lot of reasons this chest pain can happen, but the aspirin should work like a charm. At this point, that other ambulance that just treated this one should be back on scene to transport this one. Now, last person, this male driver. let's say they're all good on the AFPU scale. They're doing okay. They're reassessing. Let's just go ahead and transport. That's how you should handle this scene. I know that is a lot, especially for the EMT scenarios I just went through for the past, a few minutes. But what did I say? Who was the first person to come out? The female driver. Who was next? The female passenger. Who was next? The teen passenger, because they're still, in the vehicle and they're unconscious. And then last is the male driver, because at least we know they're conscious enough to be outside the vehicle and know that they're confused. So y'all just pay attention to those key things. Just because the male driver is in worse condition than anybody else does not mean that they're a priority. Our priority should be focusing on what vehicle is the active fuel leak. We said it was a sedan. What does that mean? It could start fires. It could explode. Blah, 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 blah. Y'all don't want to hear me rumble about that, so I won't. So let's talk about disconnect communication. So when we think about when talking to dispatch, I'm going to give y'all an example of an on-scene dispatch report. Exactly how Engine 3 would say it, because they took acting incident command. You ready? Dispatch, Engine 3 is on scene of a 2-vehicle MVA with multiple patients, possible entrapment, and hazards present. Engine 3 establishing Highway 75 command, send additional EMS, rescue, and law enforcement. Reassign our original medical call to the next available unit. Why did they do that? I literally explained, they established scene command. That's what the first thing we did. They, requested additionals, and they explained what's going on. And they also rerouted and tried to reroute another ambulance. So just so y'all know, this is how you would handle a scene like this. Because y'all are in the fire service and EMT service, or not EMT service, that's horrible. Fire service and medical service, these are things you should look out for and what you should know. All my officers out there, pick up on what I just said about incident command and how they communicated. That is really good to know, especially if you get told to be, during your evaluations, if you get told to take over as scene command. Anyways, that is all I had for y'all today. If you have any questions about this scenario, please let me know, and I'll be able to happily answer that in more detail, because I don't want to rumble all night. You guys have a wonderful rest of y'all's morning, and I'll see you this afternoon with our next discussion topic. Have a good night.